Hello, and welcome to the first of probably three reflections on Pope Francis's book, Let Us Dream, and maybe follow up the three reflections with a Zoom meeting to maybe discuss it. In the newsletter for the 8th of March last year, a couple of weeks before we went into lockdown, but at the time Italy was beginning to experience the impact of coronavirus, I printed a reflection of Pope Francis that someone had sent me during the previous week. And this is what Francis wrote. Tonight, before falling asleep, think about when we will return to the street, when we will hug again, when all the shopping together will seem like a party. Let's think about when the coffee will return to the bar, the small talk, the photos close to each other. We think about when it will all be a memory, but normalcy will seem an unexpected and beautiful gift. We will love everything that has so far seemed futile to us. Every second will be precious. Swims in the sea, the sun until late, sunsets, toasts, laughter. We'll go back to laughing together. Strength and courage. See you soon. When I first read those words, I believed that they were prophetic. And I believe that even more now. Let Us Dream is the product of a cooperation between Pope Francis and the British journalist Austen Ivory. It's a reflective and retrospective look back at the last year and a brave attempt to see what the intervening months have taught us, and just how right Francis was in those words he penned before it all really went into lockdown. He begins his book with a quote from St. Luke's Gospel, chapter 22, verse 31, where Jesus says to his disciples, "I'll sift you all like wheat." We've been well and truly sifted in the past year, and I think a number of things have happened. Our priorities and our lifestyle has changed, partly by choice and partly by what has happened. On the one hand, we've been limited in so many different ways by restrictions that have been imposed, lifted, and reimposed. Sorry about that. These restrictions have been irksome and in some cases debilitating. On the other hand, people have chosen to do things which have made a difference to others. An army of former nurses who've returned to work in the NHS. Volunteers came forward as healthcare assistants. Individuals put themselves forward to man car parks, to act as stewards and administer vaccines. His first chapter is called Let Us See, an opportunity to take stock of what's going on around us and to see where we fit into the picture. Our crisis isn't over. Have we come through it? If so, how have we come through it, he asks. One thing is certain. If and when we come through the crisis, we are or will be different. And that means we'll be better or worse. It's been a time of trial. We've been tested to grow and to know ourselves better. We've seen the good and the bad that have come from the pandemic. The statistics tell their own story, but they are only a part of the story because we've been called on to build on what's happened and on what we've learnt. And we've discovered that what emerges is not all bad, but it's not all good either. Our national leaders have had to tread the path between caring for people and caring for the economy. The fact that opinions are divided about how well they've succeeded is perhaps evidence of the dilemma that's being faced. And Pope Francis seems anxious that we don't fall prey to what he calls the cult of individualism, namely that I and my needs matter more than anything else, because we've got a responsibility to others around us and to the world at large. Superficial reactions get us nowhere. And I think that those three principles of the French Revolution, liberty and equality, most certainly need in this day and age to be matched by fraternity. The title of Francis' book, Let Us Dream, is based on the words of Isaiah. Come, let's talk this over. Let's dare to dream. He's aware that none of us can do everything, but he's also aware that all of us can do something. He believes that if we behave like people on the edge and look in from the edge where those in need are living, we can get to the heart of the matter, because places and situations that are not right at the moment are also places with potential, places with possibility. And Romans chapter 5, verse 20 remind us that where sin abounded, grace abounded all the more. Francis' heart goes out to those large numbers on the margins, and he talks about the Rohingya, the Uyghurs, and the Yazidi. And he believes that when we start to lose ourselves in the service of others, we grow by giving rather than preserving ourselves. And he's very conscious of the myth of self-sufficiency, that it's possible because people view the earth as there to be plundered. As long as we can get what we need, or believe that others are there to serve our needs, and that what we earn or lack in earnings is, at the end of the day, what we deserve. And if my reward is riches, even if others suffer poverty, that's just the way it is. And we can only see our way out of this when we start to recognize that we belong to God and to each other. Lockdown, far from hemming us in, can bring us out of ourselves. And Francis likens the pandemic to Noah and the ark. At the end of the 40 days, the animals and humans emerge from the ark regenerated and ready for a fresh start. And he sees emerging from lockdown, as we're starting to think now, is a time for the earth to bounce back to what it should be. It's a time for the poor to find fresh hope, a time and a moment that we cannot afford to lose. Because you and I can be narcissistic, self-centered, we can be discouraged, we can be pessimistic, and all of these attitudes and feelings can block and paralyze and stop us from moving forward. When people begin counseling and have told their story, they may well be asked, is there any one small positive thing that could be done which would start to make things better. No grand scheme or earth-shattering proposal, just a little something that moves us from the virtual world to the real world, a small step at a time. And Francis wonders whether, in fact, social distancing is something that comes easily to us, because it's what so many of us spend our lives doing in any case, keeping other people at a distance. It's so easy to lose our ability to walk in somebody else's shoes. But we believe in a God who comes running out to us, not a God who acts on what Francis calls the principle of so whatism. In other words, what can we do about it? That's the way things are. So he encourages us to see things in a new light, because small gestures can make a real difference. He also says that we don't always realize how easily manipulated we are by social media, by the press, by broadcasting, because so often they want us to see things from their viewpoint, or they might believe that they are mirroring our viewpoint. We're let off the hook when we can find a scapegoat. Just remember how a certain former US president insisted on referring to the current pandemic as the China virus. So if social distancing is one thing, then masks are another, because quite often you and I don't need to be asked to wear a mask, because we're already covered in layers of them which stop others knowing who we really are. Our onion skins need to be peeled off before people get to the heart of us. So those two images of social distancing and masking are actually very pertinent, because on the one hand, they're an irritant to us, but at another level, they're part of the way we do things normally. And Francis reminds us that we can shape the future, but we can't change the past. Pulling down the statues of slave traders neither absolves them, nor does it heal the injustice of what's happened. And he's also conscious of something which he calls integral ecology, believing that we can't feel strongly about some things if it means that we don't care about others. And he poses what I think is a really interesting challenge to us. He says, if you think that abortion, euthanasia, and the death penalty are acceptable, your heart will find it hard to care about the contamination of rivers and the destruction of the rainforest. Deterioration in our culture and our morality will go hand in hand with an ecological crisis. So he's made that really important link. It's what he calls integral ecology. Important link between some of the things we stand hard and fast by with what's happening in the world around us, happening because of climate change, happening because of the rape and pillage of the earth. And his chapter concludes with his thoughts of what he calls the paradox of lockdown. And he contrasts the prevalence of domestic violence on the one hand and the gift of precious time with those we love. A time together for revisiting the past and putting to bed forever the grievances and grudges that have dogged us till now. He also says that we're quick, hopefully and rightly, to seek intervention for those who are physically or mentally ill. But he says we can be blind to the need for spiritual healing, where equally we and others need help from outside. If COVID or any other disaster does anything, it does help us to see what needs to change. Paul the Apostle, in his dramatic conversion experience, came to realize that previously he'd been committed to causes and ideologies, while he's now committed to the person of Jesus Christ. But even his sudden switch from hostility to Christians to being a champion and proclaimer of the gospel, it took time to work its way through his system. Now, you may not agree with everything Pope Francis says. It's not an infallible document. But I don't think anybody can ever claim that he doesn't challenge us to think again and to change. If you haven't got hold of the book yet, if you haven't got it on Kindle or ordered a copy, it's a very reasonable price. And it's written in language that is so accessible that it makes sense when we read it. It's not hard going. It's not like a papal document. So the book is called Let Us Dream. The first chapter is called Let Us See. And the second chapter that we'll look at next week is called A Time to Choose. Thank you and God bless.